In this episode of Rich in Relationship, you thought you were rowing together, but actually you're rowing in different directions. Hey, we all remember what it feels like to be in love, don't we? In love is that idyllic, almost addictive state. In love is that state where you see one another for who you're going to be. In fact, your partner sees you as more than you see yourself and vice versa. That is the beauty of in love. And when people in love get together and form a family, it is a beautiful thing. And when they form a family and get into business together, it's an even more beautiful thing in some ways. But here's what you need to know is that when people are married and working together, it ramps everything up. So in this episode of Rich in Relationship, I'm talking to you whether you're in business together or not. I'm talking about the marital relationship. And just get that if you're entrepreneurs, everything is amplified 10x. People get married because they work well together. They like working together. They enjoy creating together. They're creating a life together for themselves, for their kids when they have them, a life that extends out to their extended family. People who do this and start a business together are doing that on steroids, right? They're doing it at home, they're doing it at work. What's cool about doing it at work is they're playing with more tools and the consequences are lower, right? At home, the consequences are, what have we done to our children? I can tell you, being a person who has grandchildren at this stage in life, today is my granddaughter Olivia's 3rd birthday, and I've never met her because of the consequences of the mistakes I made as a parent. The consequences for parenting are 110% more, 210% more than the consequences for being entrepreneurs. In fact, the beauty of working together and being married together is you can figure out stuff in the workplace and those improvements can be taken home to the family and the consequences are lower. So here's the deal. You get together because you feel like you're rowing in the same direction. And when you row in the same direction, it feels like there's a freaking outboard motor in the back of your boat. It feels like magic, right? But somewhere along the journey, the in-love part, that magic of in-love, that's a short-term thing. We all know that because life gets real very fast. And then further along the journey, you're like, wait a minute, the boat isn't going quite where I want it to. What's going on here? The dynamic changes. It changes quietly. It changes slowly. And you start wondering, is there something about how we're rowing that isn't right? Or even worse, you start wondering, is it them? You start feeling criticized. You start feeling like you're being made to do things that you're not good at. Oh, you do them because it's for the good of the business or for the good of the family. But you're wondering, why are you doing them? Why aren't they doing that? And they're wondering the same thing. Why do I feel like I'm constantly compensating? And then something dangerous happens. You stop looking at the friction and you start focusing on your partner. And that's when things get really hairy, not just for you, but for your kids, right? Because your kids have internalized the two of you. I'm gonna say that again. Within each child is mom and dad. And when external mom and dad see each other as less than, guess what happens to your children? They internalize that way dad is less than, in some way mom is less than. Every way that you criticize each other in front of the children, or sometimes not even in front of them, they pick it up. They're like little magnets. The same is true if you're working together. If you're criticizing each other, even if you're not acting it out in front of your employees, they, just like your children, are picking up on it. The clients, just like your children, are picking up on it. And it starts to create a drag. In a previous episode, we talked about what it's like to have a boat with an anchor behind it. Well, in this one, if you're you're rowing in cross directions, you're basically going around in circles. And you might be making enough money to eat. You might be doing pretty well at home. You might have some nice stuff, but it feels like you're going nowhere. I worked with a couple who had exactly this going on. They looked mad successful on the outside. They had the beautiful house. They had a lovely family. Their children were performers like them. Their kids were performing in school. They were busy. They did good in the world, but when they came into work with me, they would say things like, I thought you took care of that. No, you were supposed to take care of that. What happened with that client? You had that client. What happened with the kids? Why were you late to pick them up in school? What do you mean you were distracted? What do you mean the kids went to school with peanut butter and jelly again? They started laying into each other right away, and they weren't discussing the real problem. They were picking at each other. They were negotiating ownership of the problem in real time. What I mean by that? Negotiating ownership means it's your fault. I'm perfect. You know, at Rich in Relationship, we talk about the fight. This is an intellectual version of the fight. The really emotional version of the fight is, it's all your fault, no matter what. The intellectual version of it is looking for weaknesses in the other person and using that same hypercritical, I'm gonna win, you're gonna lose energy in a very intellectual, nitpicky, critical kind of way. These folks weren't rowing together. They were rowing at cross purposes, and it was hurting them, it was hurting their business, and most importantly, it was hurting their kids. And I've seen this across dozens and dozens of couples. Different personalities, different cultures, different businesses, same pattern. Passing the buck back and forth. Grabbing the buck. No, I'm taking care of that. No, you. Or complete parallel lives. Avoiding conflict altogether just through, I'm gonna do my thing, you're gonna do yours. And of course, what goes with that is tag team parenting. I'll be parent for now. Okay, it's your turn to be parent. The kids never see them working together. You remember we started out with what it's like to row together? The kids aren't seeing that anymore. And again, think about what it does to them. If you can't imagine what it's doing to you, imagine what it does to them. And think about what it's doing to your business. If you could get back in that boat and row together and have that magic, have that speedboat effect again, how would that be for you? I want you to know, I've lived this myself, right? My wife and I have been stuck more than once. There was one season in particular where we were working hard, we were pushing hard, we were trying so hard to get along and be good partners and be good parents, and you know, the level of tension was surreal. We weren't fighting, but we weren't in harmony, and it reverberated with our kids. You remember earlier I talked about my granddaughter who I don't know? I'm convinced that the reason why I don't know her is the impact of that tension. And I'm gonna take some personal responsibility. Like any parent, I made a lot of mistakes there with that young man who had that child. And you know what? Today, I wish nothing but blessings on them, right? It's her birthday. God bless her. I hope they're happy and fruitful. I hope that someday that I can be forgiven and that I can be in their lives. But if not, you know, I only wish goodness and grace on them. Because you know what I learned with my wife? Working harder doesn't get things done. Pushing harder doesn't get you there. Trying to make people do what you want never works. It doesn't help. And so we hired someone to help us. We hired a coach. Because when you're inside the boat, you can't always see the direction you're going. You can't always see what's going on. You can't see how you're maybe both trying to row in the same direction, but you're just out of sync, or maybe one's got a bigger oar than the other, or you just can't always see. You're in the weeds. You can't see the forest for the trees. Sometimes you need an outside perspective, and we got that outside perspective. We finally saw the forest for the trees. We finally stopped fighting about which tree was whose, and we started to recognize that we were both stewards of the same forest. And that changed everything. And we started to get close again. And we didn't fall back in love, because honestly, I think that's a limited time offer. What we have now is what I like to call, it's not very sexy, mature romance. But what it means is we are always courting each other. We go off and do our own things, but we're also very much in each other's corner. And when I'm in pain, she's in pain, and when she's in pain, I'm in pain. And our kids are healing also. Not that they were totally messed up, but of the 5 kids that we raised, 4 of them are still in touch with each other and with us, and we're spending time together individually and as a group. We love each other. And we're talking about some of the mistakes that we made, some of the ways that we rode in different directions, all of us. And honestly, this is why I do this work now, because I want your family, your business, your kids to have greater joy and greater success moving forward than they do now. Because when couples come to Rich in Relationship, it's not because things just aren't working, it's because they're stuck in the weeds and they just need to get that 10,000 foot perspective, relearn how to communicate in a way that's effective, in a way that's loving and caring. And one of the first things we do is we help them get out of the weeds, step out of the boat, if you will. We use assessments. How are they using their time? How are they energized? We help them see how their skill sets and abilities can best be used at home, and if they're working together at work, if they're working separately at work. And we help them see maybe their skill sets neither of them have. That's why they're getting help, and we help them to find people who have the skill sets to fill those areas in their life. And they redirect, they re-energize, they reimagine, they re-engage. And suddenly the conversation shifts from, why are you working against me? Why aren't you pulling your weight? To maybe we've been rowing in different directions. Maybe we just need to learn how to row together again when we first got together. That realization changes everything, because prosperous partnerships are not built by rowing harder. They're not built through pushing. They're not built through making the square peg go through the round hole. They're built by learning to row together in sync, in harmony. That's where synergy is. That's where people start to build together. And speaking of building together, we're going to be launching our entrepreneurial loving relationship now. And speaking of building together, here at Rich in Relationship, we are going to be launching our Prosperous Partners groups soon. These are entrepreneurial groups set up to help you succeed in business and get back on the same page, row together. So if you are an entrepreneurial couple and you want to make things even better, contact me at richinrelationship.com and I will let you know as soon as these prosperous partnership groups get going. In the meantime, thank you for listening. Thank you for staying with us all the way through. Make sure you like and subscribe, and have an amazing day and a fantastic tomorrow.